Hello, everyone. This is yet another episode of Enter the Matrix Road to WTC. And today, with Nathan, we're going to talk about Team France, which is yet another top contender, which I think has quite a good shot of making the podium, although the last time they did was, I think, in Salamanca.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the only podium they actually got in their whole history. So, but they've tried way harder this year. They changed a lot in their team choice, how they are choosing their team, which you can listen in the episode of Contact Lost, where they talk to Olivier about how that nation performs and how they prepare for the event. Anyway, how are you, Nathan? Can you
I
are you
am
feeling
fantastic.
fine with recording every day?
Yes, absolutely no problem. That is part of the job. There's obviously we can't get through every team, but at least we're doing some of the interesting ones.
Yeah. So let's, without further ado, just get into it. So when I looked at the whole team, it's another kind of a team that looks just like a regular choices of like 8 armies that you would take with small like choices within those armies, but nothing huge. I think they are quite. I feel like France as a team comp is somewhere between you guys and us.
Yeah,
They
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So you want to start with this one?
So we have Necrons for those who are listening. 2 hex marks, one with Veil, Nemesaur, Overlord with Stealth, 2 Technomancers, Transcendent Satan with the 4+ Feel of Pain, Reanimator, 2 units of 3 Scarabs, 2 units of 2 Thralls, 3 Doomsday Arcs, 1 single Heavy Destroyer, and then the standard 2 units of 10 Lich Guard. So it's a little bit more shooty than other Necron lists that we tend to see with the double Lich Guard blob.
Yeah. And one thing that stands out to me is that hex mark with Veil.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, I can see that being used as a way of sometimes I need to Veil for a side objective and then threat an opponent with like Resurrection. But as we mentioned in the previous episode, like Necron Resurrection is not as great on the lone operatives.
No,
So
it's medium.
So there's that, and I that one is something that stands out to me the most. Like usually that Veil on a big squad like Lichguard, who are rather slow, can position you turn one into a spot where you start threatening your opponent, like going on the side marker, covering more board actually, or even like in case of Aussies, grabbing a marker because you have Chronomancer and stuff, right? And here, having it on a hex mark seems like a weird choice, especially that you, for the same role, you kind of can use the Transctan.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that one is interesting. Other than that, this army feels like it has way more chaff than the regular, or like more units rather than investing into more Ctan, because you have the Creme and Scarabs, which are probably for just doing some early missions because they are 0 OC. So and their lowering OC of opponents can sometimes come into play, but you need to survive.
Yes, and they just don't. Usually, yeah, I can imagine they're only really there for secondary play. So overlooking the kind of list, it's interesting. Without the Veil in the Lich Guard, without multiple Satans, it then ends up being, is this list going to struggle to score a little bit? I know he's put a couple of little things in there, but say the Lich Guard have to deploy, and that's kind of where they are. They're not fast, and one of them has
Unless
got
you shoot
Veil.
them. If you shoot them, suddenly they can be fast.
Yes, true. But then again, that's always been one of the downsides of Necrons at the moment, is they're a little bit slow for scoring. So this list maybe will struggle a little bit with that. Obviously, the bones of it is great, and the Doomsdays obviously add some ranged fire that some of the others don't have, and a bit of more offensive capability. But again,
with like reroll wounds, sometimes you can fish for mortal wounds, and actually Doomsday can kill as bigger units, etc.
But now, I'd be interested to see how this does. I'd normally see it a little bit more scoring orientated. But this might be if he had more heavy destroyers, I could maybe see this being a little bit more early put forward and maybe taking a lighter table.
Our Necrons are basically remove the Transitan, get another hex mark and more destroyers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same list.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And one thing that just baffles me when I looked through the list, there's no Coronal, which I think in a list that has 3 Doomsdays is just great because suddenly, that one. I'll go through the lists to make sure that I didn't skip it, but they have Veil, 4++ and Stealth, so you cannot take 4th enhancement. And they skipped Coronal, which I think is quite great if you invest into shooting, because suddenly those Doomsdays are hitting, they have +1 to hit, etc. Because this is dumb, they count as having a character attached. So and some of the stratagems in Necrons Index actually perform way better when they count as having a character. So this is one thing that just raises my brow. Like,
interesting.
Is that Stealth that much of a change on that Lichguard squad then? Like, sure, it changes a little bit, but you have the other squad which doesn't have Stealth.
Yeah.
And if you do not want them to be seen by shooting, like, I think I don't mind having a Stealth on Lichguard, but not having Coronals feels like a little bit weird, because Hexmark with Coronal can just be there to buff stuff and still be a Hexmark. So that's one thing that I'm not sold on.
Yeah. It's like we said earlier, it's got everything you kind of want, but then some of the little tech choices are interesting. But I'd have to just see maybe what he's trying to do with the options he's taking.
Yeah, but it can be like a defender list. It can still win against some armies. Like, some armies just cannot shift it. And if you cannot, it's basically what we mentioned in previous episode. It is kind of a stat check. If you cannot kill a Lichguard squad as an army, those 2 squads will just push you off the board.
Eventually,
unless you have some other ways of handling it, like with the horde that Ozzy's brought, right? That basically blocks your movement, etc. But if you cannot handle it in any way, either killing or like blocking and stuff, this will just kill you. Even though like their damage output is not great, but damage output over time will just whittle you down, especially with Doomsdays included into the mix.
For sure.
So, moving forward, this is another version of Custodes that is different than what we've seen, even though like we're joking that there's 5 or 6 units in that codex. You only have 1 Blade Chap, 1 Shield Captain, 2x9 Guard with Vexilla, and total of 4 shields. So 3 shields, Vexilla, and 5 spears. 2x4 Men Guard with Vexilla and shield. 4 Prosecutors, 2x3 Alarus, and 3 Wardens. So it's like similar to some extent to what we mentioned in German list, because Germans took like a lot of smaller units, and here we also have a lot of smaller units with like the free wardens, etc. They had more guard and more characters in exchange of the bigger guard squads, essentially.
Yeah.
But the big guard squads can threaten a lot of damage. So what's your take on the army on this choice?
Yeah, again, it's similar to the German version where he's dropped 3 characters. The other guy had 2 shield caps, 2 blade champions, and
Trajan,
thank you. And this has gone for, I can swap every one of those characters for basically 4 dudes in those guard units. So they're 1 shield, So the only thing sometimes 4 shields is nice for survivability, but it reduces your damage.
I think it's too much. I think 4 is too much.
Yeah, especially when the Vexilla doesn't have the combat weapon either. It then ends up being, has he got only 4 spears in a unit?
You have 5 spears. I mentioned that Vexilla is included in one of those shields.
Ah, right. Sorry. Yeah, I was thinking of
Yeah.
with Vexillus. Okay. Yeah. 5. Yeah. Again, this is. I would maybe prefer this in some ways because you can push those big blocks, and from there, you have a better chance of if you clear something off an objective. If your opponent then tries to retaliate, you might actually have a lot more on the objective still to hold the objective than you would do, say, with a 4-man unit with a character.
And you still would kill the guard, like the shield guys first anyway.
Exactly.
So losing them, because you are bound with such footprint of a unit, you are bound to lose some guys on the way. So
Exactly,
it might be actually it might be actually fine when it comes to playtesting, and we might not have played it enough to think that it might be a wrong choice.
Yes, for sure. No, I don't think the 4 shields is necessarily a wrong choice because these big blocks have a lot more staying power because I presume most of the time the 2 characters are going in the 2 blocks.
Yeah.
So it's going to be one of those. The other version had all the characters in, so sometimes the characters really offering more than, say, adding 4 or 5 guys. With normally I'm going to guess about 4 guys. So then it ends. Well, maybe not 4 guys, 3 guys.
There's again a case of why do you have 3-man Alaris squads instead of 2-man Alaris? What's the breakpoint? What are we missing? Yeah, I will be happy to learn that when we actually be at the event. There must be something for it.
Yes, yeah. I'm wondering if there's either it's because it gives you enough OC, it's enough attacks to kill something in particular, or if it's just a case of it's enough to not get overwatched. To be if you deep strike 2 in, 1 dies from an overwatch, and actually now 1-man unit does nothing now. Maybe. But yeah, interestingly, no assassin or smaller squads. I know he's got the 4 prosecutors, but not a lot of small chaff to help out with the list. Definitely a lot more. It's actually big infantry blocks that are going to have to do most of it.
And that's something that we'll get to later. I think France used the agents in a wrong way when I looked at all the lists. I think they should have actually put them in Custodes, I think, instead of how they use it, but we'll get to that later.
Sure.
So this is another list of Custodes. I think it has the same good matchups, basically the same bad matchups. It might be slightly better into some of them, but I don't think it is necessarily a big swing into how it performs.
Nope.
So moving on, you want to take this one?
Sure. Thousand Suns. So we have Araman on disc, Exalted Sorcerer on disc, Magnus. Interestingly, this one's got 3 sorcerers, a unit of 10 rubrics with flamers, 10 5/5 rubrics with bolters, single rhino, 2 vortex mucilith beasts, and then 3 units of 3 Zangor Enlightened. So what's quite nice in this one is he's actually got 3 sorcerers. So he hasn't necessarily gone for the same amount of damage output with the Infernal Masters, who I think help Rubik squads quite a lot, especially with the enhanced one, giving you the extra damage and strength. But then for that, he swapped out some much more survivability with having 3 sorcerers, so you can't shoot them within 18 inches. Yeah.
18 inches low knobs.
Yeah, so he can either plonk those in the 10-man units, or he can have a couple of the 5-man units.
Assuming there's one rhino, I see the flamers being in that rhino and the bolter squads being on board with sorcerers.
Yeah, most likely, yeah. And then, the flamer unit will probably have Araman in it, and then the Exalted on disc is just doing his usual play.
On his own.
Yeah, and then 3 units of Zangor Enlightened are quite useful. They're just 12-inch movers to help you do secondaries. They're quite cheap now.
45 points is a steal.
Yeah, they're very good, yeah. And they have an invuln, which is kind of useful still. They might do.
I'm not sure about that, but
maybe they don't now. But yeah, 45 points for a 12-inch moving unit. Even though fly is not great anymore, that's still, yeah. Because I don't think they have an infantry keyword like a Exalted on Disc does.
Yeah, I think so as well, but I'll double check that one.
Again, having a single Rhino is super useful to how, because these kind of lists are quite difficult to actually fully deploy and fully deploy effectively sometimes, because having 32 mil bases plus monsters plus Magnus, it starts adding up to where you can really start putting units effectively, because Thousand Suns, while do have the double move, not everything's double moving, so sometimes units are slower. So yeah, the Rhino certainly helps with that, and the way 10th works now, where you can get out at the end of your movement and then double move with Thousand Suns, is super useful to get them into really great positions.
Yeah, and just for clarification, Zangers have 6 involved,
6 up,
like
okay.
they used to.
Something, yeah, not terrible.
And they also have the runaway if something comes with 9. So still can, but they do not have infantry keyword. They are mounted. So if something has poison suddenly because they are on disc, it doesn't work because
for some reason,
because of 10th.
Yeah.
Basically, the best counter against a poison weapon is actually having 4 legs, apparently. So.
Apparently, yeah. 2 Vortex Beasts is an interesting choice. They're good. They are very good. It's whether you needed multiple. Usually you can some list or play them as hiding 1 and just to boost some ranges, and then can kind of like come out later on and harass a flank or something. Well, like the flank that it's on. Whereas say so the Australian list we talked about the other day had 3, so I'd imagine he's using them much more offensively to get some damage done. But yeah, we've talked about Thousand Suns. Go listen to our previous episodes to learn more about Thousand
Suns. Good plug.
Yeah.
Now we've got next list, which is a very interesting take on Chaos Space Marines, in my opinion, because when we were talking about Chaos Space Marines, we were mentioning how many obliges are you actually taking, and suddenly they decided that, and I'm double checking what I just wrote, they decided that they don't want any obliges in their list because their list consists of Abaddon, Cypher, 10 cultists of Nurgle, 2 spawns of Nurgle, 10 terminators of Nurgle, 3 undivided Forge Fiends, 5 raptors of Nurgle, not rapports, 3 flamers, Kairos, blue scribes, and changeling. So it's way heavier on lone ops, which, by the way, I think that having more than 2 lone ops, unless you are playing a horde like Aussies do, is actually not that useful because a lot of armies will actually push you. So maybe that 1 lone op on a board is actually really useful. Maybe that second one will have a use if you're playing more aggressive playstyle, which I think this list will try to do with the Terminators. But I'm not like fully sold.
Yeah, so I guess some of the tricks he's going to try and do is he's got Cypher and Kairos, so he's got double vect. And because they're both different abilities, you can actually stack them. So you can get to a point where for some armies you can make their 2 CP strat a 4 CP strat if you really wanted to. So it messes with the CP.
Phantasm being finally balanced.
Exactly. Then it becomes actually I can't. But then again, has he actually taken enough stuff to necessarily capitalize on some of that? He's got some decent board control with the Terminators. Abaddon's very good. I don't quite get the spawn. They're okay.
Yeah, I would much rather have a Rhino.
Yeah, or just anything else. The only you're losing some of the units of Chaos because, correct me if I'm wrong, in a detachment they obviously have no access to any of the demon stratagems. So Kairos's ability to any Tzeentch unit within 6 inches that uses a strat roll above the game turn. I'm guessing you pretty much can never do that except for maybe CP rerolls. Or
which good luck if not doing that.
Yeah, it's like okay. Yeah, it's nowhere near as useful in say a normal demon list. 3 lone operatives.
Does it mention Tzeentch demons or just Tzeentch? Because then you could actually use it on like Terminators and Abaddon, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe there's some trick like you. But are you ever playing the Siege strat. I mean, in that case, you can, but
You could use it for free early on. I'm just checking his ability. The only Zinch Legion's Demonic unit. Yeah. So
yeah, so no.
yeah, it's only demon stuff. So it's anything on himself, flamers, changeling, blue scribes.
Yeah, and much more damage output centered around those Forge Fiends, which all of them are undivided to get those full rerolls.
Yes. Yeah, they're going to have to do a lot of the work in this list. Raptors are great. I think they're an underrated unit. Granted, we took 3 units of them. They're very fast. I'm surprised you went Nurgle, not Slanesh, but I guess it's trying to keep them alive. Yeah, like you say, 3 lone ops is an interesting choice. I guess the Terminators can kind of block you off getting to certain parts of the board. If he pushes the Terminators, he could go his home center maybe and his left field objective, or with a lone op on them to then make it quite difficult to actually take some of those objectives off. But Noah Blitz is a very, very interesting choice.
Yeah, I'm not really sold on it. I think this army will really need more board choice. So
Yeah.
I think this might be some kind of a later or early defender that will just say, okay, if I take away Eldar or GSC, we are fine with it to some extent.
Yeah, even just if you could have found the space, I don't know, dropping the Spawn, the Raptors, one of the lone ops, just to even put like 1 4-mana Blitz unit in, would have just like, okay, I can see what they're trying to do. It puts the, but then it's difficult.
And for the listeners, I will expand a little bit on this. I think having 1 unit with an option to actually indirect fire and be that rapid ingress any point of the board actually shooting you unit is something that is a huge benefit for you when it comes to game plan, because it forces your opponent to make some choices that you otherwise do not have to make. And those 4 obliterators are way more of a threat compared to like a Forge Fiend, which is not that great into every kind of a opposing unit that it will face, whilst oblits, due to how their flesh metal guns are done this edition, are actually very versatile. So I think having any unit like obliterators or anything that is just a threat, constant threat, is worth having in your list.
Definitely, yeah. But again, I'm interested to see how this does. It's very unique. Yeah, I like it. It looks cool as an army, but yeah, I don't know where necessarily it stands competitively.
Yeah. So moving forward, do you want to take this one now?
Yeah, so we have guard plus agents. So we have King Leonidas, whatever his actual name is. A command squad, 2 engineers, Creed, 2 units of 10 infantry. Oh, yeah, I did say it with guard. 2 units of 3 Bulgarin, and then we have the artillery section, 2 Earthshaker battery, 3 Manticores, 2 Rogel Dawns, 2 single scouts, and a Calidus.
So before we get into guard overall, let me just preface the part about having Calidus. I think in guard, you don't benefit that much from having Calidus or her movement around the board, because first of all, if you want, you can get the enhancement to actually increase the CP cost of something. You have access to cheap units if you want to, like Sentinels and similar stuff. And third of all, you have access to Gaunt Ghosts, which have the redeploy and lone up. So having Calidus in guard, I think, is taking away her abilities from other armies, which will benefit from it more, whilst guard could still take them. And now on to you.
Yeah, so like if we're talking about, say, the Custode list, it might have been more beneficial in the Custode list to have lost that small Warden unit for a Calidus and maybe an Exactor squad or whatever they're called, to actually help him with a little bit more scoring. But yeah, so this guard list, it's an interesting one. I've not particularly seen how well Rogel Dawns do at the moment. I thought they struggled a little bit with line of sight, movement, and those kind of things.
Yeah, the new terrain rules with you having to be wholly within change a lot.
Because they're not small, they're big tanks. And the damage felt, when you look at it, it feels quite good, but then again, some of it's melter, so it's short range, and it's the lower strength melter. The gun's not got super high AP, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's like high damage, but not great AP. The list feels a little bit light on the board control aspect, unless he's relying on the Rogel Dawns doing quite a lot of it.
Which, to be fair, they can with engine sears. Like, engine sears can actually buff them and make them way more resilient on the board.
Yeah, and Creed makes them -1 damage, yeah?
No, Strut. Yeah, but...
Yeah.
I don't think you can use that on from Creed, but yeah.
Oh, they just FAQ then.
Yeah. But still, you can make them -1 damage, etc. So
only 2 Earthshaker batteries and 3 Manticores. It's good, and out of line of indirect. But the guard lists that I've seen that have been doing quite well just kind of maximize the indirect aspect.
I think our guard has 8 indirect batteries. I think. Yeah.
Obviously, so it's biased maybe towards our meta, but it's that scariness of you just can't hide from this list. It will, if it's
get you.
Yeah, it can get you. Yeah,
you can run, but you cannot hide.
You'll just die tired. Bulgren are great. They're fantastic. I'd imagine they're just to help push out a little bit and score. Yeah. Infantry useful for screening. He hasn't got anything to push GSC back. He hasn't got the 12-inch deep strikers. I haven't seen Rogel Dawns on the table enough to comment on how good they are or not. We could be missing.
And they are like 500 something points.
They're expensive, yeah. Whereas you might look at, say, one of the, I think you guys tried it out at some point. The Super Heavy was nice with the transport capacity. Might have been a more better choice because it has the.
But then it requires a board choice. Way more.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Overall, decent guard list. Might be a waste of agents because, like you say, guard don't really need it. But it'll pretty.
That's the only thing that I don't really like. I think the agents are a waste in the team comp.
A little bit, yeah.
And now for the spicy thing, the Black
you're
Templars.
Gonna have to go through this one.
Yeah. So we have Black Templars operated by Olivier, who was playing Salamanders as the only player last year, so he likes to be the snowflake. Hi, Olivier, if you're listening to this one. So they have Grimaldus, 2 Chaplains and Jab Packs, 1 with Sigismund Seal, 20 Primaris Crusaders, 2 times Assault Squads, 2 times 3 Inceptors with Assault Bolters, 1 Land Speeder, 2 times 5 Scouts, and 2 Whirlwinds. And so, for this army, on paper, it looks like you have 3 blocks and support, which is true. But what is hiding underneath is the best close combat units in the game. Because unless you actually go through the strats and the absurd amount of combinations you have there with lethal hits, sustained hits and critical hits on 5-up, suddenly it happens that having all those attacks with offs of moment and +1 to wound from Chaplain, etc., I think when I've done the calc, actually, one of the guys from our community done the calc. I've done it at first, and I didn't realize they can get critical hits on 5s. And then when you calculate it, I think 10-man assault squad with all the buffs off of moments, etc., CP spent, etc., kill every unit in the game we think about.
Oh, okay.
Every single unit. You just mention a unit now, like, okay, cool, 20 Necron Warriors, dead. 10 Lich Guard, dead. 10 Rave Guard, dead.
Max 1 unit?
That one you do not kill because you die.
Yes.
Fight
Oh,
first.
no, yeah. I wasn't talking about necessarily with the fight first, but even wardens with a
Yeah.
character and
Yeah.
pop the filler pain, -1 damage, all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, they kill 10
Nice.
Deathwing Knights, so I think they kill also that Warden unit.
Yeah, they're killing Deathwing Knights. They're killing wardens. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to go message Team England. Guys, look at this again.
So this is something that if someone doesn't know, so sorry, Oliver, for spoiling a little bit of it, this will surprise people. But there are a few issues with such an army because it is very dependent on the squads coming to combat with their full strength.
Yeah.
Those thresholds will drop significantly if they get down to like 6 models, etc. Suddenly you do not kill enough, and then you die on a clapback because you're only effectively 11 Marines. And there are some choices because chaplains will be in those assault squads. Like that just makes sense. And Grimaldo's joining Crusaders actually means they cannot scout because he doesn't have scout.
Yes. That's
So that's a choice. But that big unit still, I think it's like 70 attacks from chainswords that can get all those buffs as well. So it is good, but there are like issues with such a melee because the damage output, if all of the models get in, etc., is out of this world. Like now, only unit that was comparable in their melee potential was Graveguard.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a fair comparison.
No.
So, but this army will require very good positioning to make sure that all of your models will actually get to strike, because this edition is not as easy with all the base to base, etc. You can get, if you, for example, are standing just behind the wall that the first models can get through the wall, then suddenly second line cannot fight. So there are ways to outplay this that do not abuse the you cannot block the charge rule, because rules as written, you get to charge, but you cannot get into base to base because there is a wall. So there are those things that you can work around it. Obviously, if your rolls like 12 in charge, it doesn't matter. But there are some ways to work around it. So this is something that will catch people off guard, and I love it. Like I love how Olivier actually always finds something out there that doesn't look like much, and then suddenly when playing against like a Death Star style list, it will be insanely effective. So, and then you also have those small squads like Inceptors, Land Speeders, etc. to do the regular mission scoring. That's the discussion we had about Inceptors in Death Watch as like a good scorers, bringing some points from actually just deep striking, doing some stuff. So overall, great list. I love it. I think it is in like top 3 of my favorite lists of the event, because it gives me a vibe of like 4th, 5th edition Black Templars.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It reminds me of like some kind of Black Templars, Blood Angels from like 4th, 5th, which were like melee centric, and even the models that are played, only Inceptors actually weren't played back then. So
well,
because they weren't. So there's 2 weird wins as a choice of indirect. I overall think this list is just meant to counter any Death Stars like Necrons. They will, if Eldar doesn't know how to play, they will be very unpleasantly surprised when those boys just come in and kill that avatar or anything on a middle objective or Wraith Knight, and it suddenly just dies. But obviously, Wraith Knight can play around it with killing enough in Overwatch, right? But you need to be aware of it when playing into it, and I don't think you can always play around it. But yeah,
nice.
Your takes. I know that you've learned some today, but maybe you have something.
I'm 100% going to go and study this list afterwards. Be like, this is cool. This is what this does. Things. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what its matrix is, because, like you say, it should theoretically smash Custodes, but because Custodes can fight first, it probably doesn't.
You cannot.
Go through
you
this.
cannot.
Necrons, I guess if they don't have enough shooting, you can get through to them at pretty much full strength. And actually, charging big units is probably better for this list. Like you say, you're struggling to maybe bring all your attacks to bear sometimes.
That might be a reason why he has Inceptor Bolters as well, to kill chaff and
Possibly.
smaller units.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Because I was wondering why he had bolters over the... Obviously, I know
I mean,
the
they're
Death Watch
still not bad. Sustained hits too is a thing, so
it's good. Yeah. But no, it's definitely interesting. Yeah, if it bullies everybody else in the combat, that does open up its pairings. I just worry a little bit. Death Watch with indirect, probably very annoying for this.
Guard is unplayable.
Yeah, because you just there. He's got 40 Marines effectively. It's maybe a little bit more annoying, I guess, if it goes first. Whirlwinds are actually not. Whirlwinds are okay at killing like carriages type things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Guard would probably have a pretty fun time against this. I'd imagine this drags Knights down pretty comfortably. Yeah.
I think CSM, if CSM has more obliterators, it will also be like decent into this.
Yeah.
I'd wager.
Like a 10 oblit list will just go, cool, I've killed half of it now. You charge something, and then I just shoot the rest because it's come out to play. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what its matrix is like. Obviously, the offensive capabilities is very, very high. It's just where I think you'd have to play a lot of games, like you say, get positioning correctly, because it seems like a great, phenomenal, cool-looking idea. I just don't know how it works in practice some of the time.
Yeah, and it might be difficult to just pair correctly because it has some matchups. Like, it probably has different good matchups compared to Death Watch.
Mm-hmm.
But it has also different bad matchups, and I'm not yet sure whether those bad matchups are outnumber the good matchups after the list submission. That's the caveat, because we always need to think about those armies in a vacuum of the local meta that is played within certain country, and they might just be playing something wildly different that compared to what we are used to. And one caveat: there's 3 whirlwinds actually.
Okay, cool. That's kind of nice.
One got lost when I was scrolling. So, okay, now moving forward. Go on, your time.
Eldar, again, for those listening. Autark, Farseer, Illic, Spirit Seer, Night Spinner, 5 Spectres, 5 Spiders, 5 Spiders, 10 Wraith Guard, 2 Wraith Knights. This was very similar to Manny's original list. But yeah, it's the Wraith Guard with double Wraith Knights. I think it's one of the most powerful versions of the Eldar list. I think double Wraith Knights, personally, the way you would go. And then the Wraith Guard bomb. Even though it took them hit, before it was just obnoxious. But now it's still just really good. Night Spin is a nice choice, but he obviously hasn't got Young Khan to really capitalize, I guess, on some indirect. But yeah, having some indirect is useful quite a lot of the time. Illic, Lone Op. Spectres, one of my favorite units. I've just painted 15 of them. I like the models and they're just great units. Spiders, again, fantastic. It's Eldar. What do you want? Like, the Leeds GT is happening right now, and the final 4 is Eldar, Death Watch. And yeah.
What a surprise. Is just one of them?
Yeah, he played the Death Watch, and he's in the final round now. Okay. So yeah, Eldar, everyone's favorite.
And now
everyone's
another army which is not a surprise, although there are a little bit of a difference when it comes to their 8th army, which is GSC, which has Biophagus with Aberrants. But if I remember correctly, they took infiltration, or it was just on another page. So it has Biophagus with infiltration, Clamavus to Nexus, only 2 Primus instead of regular 3 Primus, which you see in most lists. 2 saboteurs, but no vect on them.
Okay.
So he doesn't have vect. He chose the other 3 enhancements. 4 times 10 demolition charge bombs of acolytes, and only 50 seismic neos, and 2 mortar reed runners. So it is like a version that decided to basically, the cookie cutter list has 20 demo hybrids less, and has like a Primus, some 5 hybrids, and I think 20 more neos. That's something you see the most at the event. So when I look at it, I see like a pattern in their whole team composition, and that is they expect a lot of Death Stars. Running around, like Custodes, Lich Guard, etc., where those demo charges are way more effective.
100%.
So, and I think not only this list, when you look at the other list, there's a pattern they were preparing for, like Death Star style armies.
Yes, yeah, that is how the meta shifted towards the end of our testing period, or everybody's testing period, I guess. Only 2 Primus is an interesting choice. They're just so... Units without them just feel so much less effective.
They are great force multiplier.
Yeah,
insanely
really
good.
Yeah, and then 2010, the list doesn't scream tons of I don't want to say throwaway units, but as in more little things to score with. It always felt a little bit with the other versions that you maybe had just slightly better scoring. But this is...
I don't think it changes that much.
No. Oh, no, sorry, I've just reread it. Yeah, it's actually almost exactly the same. Yeah. It's got some...
It's just different units.
Yeah, but it's still the same old GSC. It's going to lob bombs at you because Space Marines have had thousands of years to develop good weapons, but nothing's better than a load of TNT strapped together, thrown by a dude with 4
and
arms.
some road signs to smash people's faces.
Exactly, yeah. Fantastic. GSC. Love them.
So, what's your take on the whole team composition, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so as you look through, you look at the 8. I think we've done this with pretty much all the other ones. What big armies do we think they didn't take? And to be honest, I don't think they missed any of the common top armies, unless I'm forgetting one. Some interesting choices. They like you said at the start, they seem to have all what we'd kind of consider the top armies, and then they just have some interesting choices in them. Like that CSM Daemons list. It's quite interesting having no obliterators when that's clearly one of the strongest units in the Codex. I'd be interested to see how well that does. The Guard, it's an interesting Guard list. I haven't seen many other lists with Rogel Dawns, or at least this one's got double Rogel Dawn with slightly less indirect, slightly less little guys walking around. And then they've kind of used the Assassin there, which was maybe an interesting choice, taking it away from Custodes. The Custode list is more blocky than others. It's great. That's actually a good list. Thousand Suns, he's gone for the more sorcerers, so that maybe feels a little bit more defensively put forward for them. Again, Necrons, pretty much there. Couple of interesting choices inside the list. But yeah, it's kind of it's everything we think a team would be, and then they've just got interesting choices. Whether they're better, I don't know. On paper, they maybe aren't in some ways, but then again, they obviously might have their own reasons for them,
and they will. And with all the choices, I think they will perform better into certain teams and worse into other teams.
For sure, yeah.
So, you cannot necessarily say any team comp is bad, because at this point in the game, I think each team has one, even say seed 3 or 4 team that has a team comp that they just do not want to play because of those little choices. So I don't think there's necessarily a bad team comp. Maybe there are some in some teams. I'm not saying there aren't, but you cannot discredit any of them.
Sure, definitely not. No. And when you do your pairings and things, you can never really factor in you shouldn't really factor in player ability or which team you're playing into.
Yeah.
You should always play that as the assumption that they are. Because if you look at previous years, Australia didn't do very well, and then they suddenly became one of the best teams there. So if you went into that year going, the years that they started doing well again, oh, it's Australia, who cares?
Yeah, and it
No,
was
no,
a
no.
case also with like US. They weren't good for a few years straight, and then they become good from
Exactly.
just after 1
Yeah.
year, right?
So yeah, so like you say, some teams just look awful on your matrix just because they just seem to have all your buggy armies. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
Nothing you can do about it. Cool. Thanks for this one. I don't think we'll make another one because tomorrow I'm flying
Probably
out.
not a time. Sure.
So thanks for listening to all the episodes about the teams. If you have anything that you would like us to cover during the event itself, because for those unaware, me, Nathan, combined with another stat check Nathan, so stats that, and two guys from Contact Loss, which is Tomek and Joker, we will be covering the event using like a studio stream where we'll be giving all those insights and analysis like we do here. So if you will have anything that you want us to tackle during the event, please just message us. We will try to answer everything. And also at the event itself, just hop in onto our stream to chat with us. Maybe you will have some questions or insights. You'll be probably following the tournament on BCP or other streams anyway. So we will be the stream that will have experts to actually talk about stuff, not only commentators and a streamed game.
Yeah. So yeah, come and see you guys there.
Thanks for listening and see ya.